Hello, everyone. Hopefully this one works. We are going to be talking about vaginismus today. The request button wasn't doing anything, and we are having nothing but technical difficulties this morning, so it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And no one is watching, so I'm really wondering if I'm talking to myself at this point. There we go. There's 3 of you here. That makes me feel better. We're going to be talking about vaginismus, so if you have any questions about vaginismus, feel free to put them in the chat, because we can talk about that. And we are both bleeding. Here we go. So we can even talk about that. Maybe. This is always the moment of truth. To see if it works out. Invite. Work. Oh. Yay!
Yes! Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself also. I'm so glad we made it.
Same. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, April. I love being here in these conversations. And yeah, even despite the tech issues, we still somehow made it work.
Well, I tried to hop on at 11 and get things going, and it just kept crashing. And so I went in a different way to start a live, and I was like, we're going to just try this. And it's working. We're here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
anyway,
I was requesting to
introduce
join.
yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I love that you're here with us. Thank you for your patience. My name is Katrin, and I live in Toronto. My partner and I flew back from a 5-week trip in Bulgaria, my hometown, just a couple of days ago. So it's been quite the transition from travel to settling back in, celebrating his birthday as well the day after we landed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What a fun trip.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're here to talk about vaginismus and even more than that, the broader aspects of being liberated in love, in sex and love and relationships. And I can share so much about my story as to what that's looked like, of course. But I imagine, both of us have had this personal inspiration as to why we do this work.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I've really enjoyed following you because you come at it with such tenderness and understanding and all of the things that I feel like people need to hear when it comes to how to work through vaginismus, and also with a lot of hope. I really feel like when people get diagnosed with vaginismus or are suffering from it, they feel like, oh, I'm broken, or this is just wrong with me, and it's always going to be wrong with me. We see that a lot with most mental illness. A lot of people think like, I've been diagnosed with this, so I have this now.
Yeah.
And with vaginismus, there is so much hope. There are so many things that you can do. And I love that is what you talk about.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's this tenderness and hope that I feel like we struggle giving to ourselves. And so it's always really nice to be able to come across the source of that on the internet, almost like as a permission slip to be able to give ourselves that love as well, and to finally feel like, oh my goodness, there are other people who are experiencing something similar to me. I'm not the only one in the world. I remember feeling like the only outcast back in the day, maybe 10 years ago now, when I read online that like 1 in 10,000, 100,000, whatever the statistic was, that I'm sure is not accurate, is going through this sexual dysfunction.
Yeah. So will you define vaginismus for us? Let's explain what that is, and maybe even talk about the difference between vaginismus and something like maybe vulvodynia or some of these other things that can cause pain, because I feel like vaginismus is more on the mental side, whereas vulvodynia and some of those may be more of a physical. And this is why it's really important to differentiate, because obviously treatment and care is going to be a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with speaking about vaginismus as what we may have experienced it as in layman's terms. And one thing that we could say is like a panic attack in the vagina is partially what vaginismus feels like.
That is a great way to describe that. Yeah.
For me, I like giving the visual, though it's quite gruesome, of if you had a sharp knife being warmed up over the fire and you tried to insert it inside of you in this place that's supposed to be such a source of connectedness and pleasure and joy, that it
Hmm.
just either feels like there's a wall there and the knife is not going in at all, or
Hmm.
it's excruciatingly painful and hot and burning and just like you want to get out of there stat. So,
Yeah.
vaginismus really is this involuntary contraction of the pelvic floor muscles at either the attempt of any sort of vaginal penetration or anal penetration or whatever it might be in that area, or at the experience of it, right? So, whether we are anticipating penetration or it's already happening, our body is tightening. And the
Hmm.
question becomes, why is our body tightening? Of course, there's so many different reasons as to why we might be experiencing vaginismus. There's quite a
Hmm.
long list that I've put together also in an Instagram post. But the foundation of it is because our body is just trying to protect us from
Yeah.
something that our mind is telling us is dangerous. So it's a perceived danger that we are simply reacting to, and hence it's a protective body response.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people are like, from what I've heard, are like, I haven't experienced sexual trauma, so why would this be happening? And that is not always a precursor to vaginismus. Like, you don't have to have experienced the trauma. There's so many other causes.
Yeah, absolutely. And also in the definition of how we define trauma, it is
Hmm.
kind of an interesting path to go down too, because I used to think that I hadn't experienced trauma. Also, right?
Hmm.
I wasn't, right, trigger warning here, I wasn't sexually abused. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was living in a place of danger all the time where I was scared of certain things. And hence I was like, what's wrong with me, right? Like, why?
Yep.
Why is this happening
Yep.
to me? And it was only through my own emotional healing journey, right? Because it is a holistic approach, that I started to discover that trauma expands into anything that feels less than nourishing, anything that
Hmm.
feels less than nourishing and hence has an impact on us, where it's not about what happened to us, it's about the
Hmm.
effect of what has happened to us in our bodies. So,
Yeah,
part of,
absolutely.
yeah, and so I feel like all of us have experienced trauma. And maybe, someone listening to this and hearing this statement that doesn't seem or feel true to you. And if that's the case, perfect. I invite you not to see it as this label of trauma. But
Yeah.
still, we've gone through certain events that have led our body to act a certain way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I love Kristen Hodson talks about, because we talk about sex ed, right? Like, if you whether or not you received sex ed. And
Yeah.
she was like, not learning anything was your sex ed, which
Mm-hmm.
plays into things like vaginismus sometimes. So it may not even be that you've had a physical experience or even a traumatic experience, but you've had ideas planted, or you know so little about this activity that you are about to participate in, that it is terrifying to you or anxiety filled, or and then
Yeah.
once you have maybe a negative experience, that can then trigger more negative experiences. And I mean, it's tricky. It's a tricky situation to pin down maybe what the cause is. And I don't even know if that's the most important thing, right? Ultimately, we want to just start wherever we are and move forward. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be that something happened to you. Like you said, trauma can be, you know, a lot of things.
Yeah, really well said. One of my mentors, the way that he put it, which has stuck with me ever since, is that language creates reality. And that's
Mm,
why it's called spelling, because it literally casts spells in our life. Now,
love
something that we haven't talked about, something that literally doesn't exist in our languaging because we never talked about our vagina when we were little. Our
yeah.
pelvic floor, this place between our legs, was a mystery, right? And whenever we don't put language to something, it literally doesn't exist in our reality. It doesn't exist for us. And hence, what does it feel like? Well, it feels like this black hole, this like unknown mass.
Mhm.
And the unknown is scary. The unknown
Yeah.
is scary outright. It doesn't have to be necessarily because we have had a message of sex being shameful, but even if we have had no messaging around it, we're literally dealing with the unknown. And what happens with
Mhm.
the unknown? We separate ourselves from it.
This
So,
is a biological response. This is not,
yeah,
this is like our body is like, I'm just trying to keep you safe. We don't know about this. So, no.
absolutely. And our body
Yeah.
says no for us. I think when we speak about vaginismus and we realize, oh, this is actually my body's way of saying no
Mhm.
because I hadn't had the capacity to be able to speak for it. I didn't know that I was a no to this. I wasn't able to verbalize my no. So then my body shut down in its attempt to do that for me.
Yeah.
And part of the journey of overcoming vaginismus is literally taking back that power and responsibility of being able to advocate for ourselves and know
Mm.
what's safe for us, what's not safe for us, and actually feel safe enough to differentiate and to walk that path.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, what has your journey been with this?
Yeah, so part of what happened that kind of led me to raising a red flag was my very first attempt with my boyfriend at the time at 18 years
Mm.
old to have PIV sex, right? Penis and vagina sex. And when that happened, I remember it clearly. We were in his room on his bed. I felt quite excited about it, right? I had nervous
Yeah.
energy as well. I had heard about first time sex being painful, which
Yeah.
unfortunately is a self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is in our excitement, in my turn on, in my desire, in my yes, right, at least on a conscious level, we tried. And his penis just felt like it was hitting a wall,
Yeah.
literally as though I was bending at my body trying to insert itself. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember feeling super confused, not really understanding what was going on. We tried another couple of times over the next week or two, and the same thing was
Mm-hmm.
happening with a little bit of progress where I was maybe telling myself to breathe a little deeper, allow him in, everything's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
he was able to insert himself a little bit, which led to excruciating pain. That same hot,
Mm.
sharp knife, right? And so
Yeah.
that was the time at which we knew something must be off and let's try to figure this out.
Yeah.
What ends up happening, we go into the deep, dark web of Google and we start thinking
Yeah.
that we have all of these different issues, right? So that essentially led me down the rabbit hole of the medical community, which unfortunately, in my experience, wasn't super helpful right away, and
Yeah.
not really at all in my journey. But
I
that's a
feel
whole
like you
other
have to have a
story.
script almost. Like you need to know exactly who to go to. You need to have the right script when you go to them. And I hate that it is it's just such a hassle to get there and get good care.
Yeah. The family doctor that I went to first, his response in the beginning was, you should just wait. It's
Yeah.
fine. Everything's okay. You should just wait. Your body must not be ready yet. Now, looking back at this, there is some wisdom there because I guess my body
Yeah.
wasn't there and ready yet. But how about some support as to how to be ready, right?
Well, it's hard
So,
because you're 18 at the time, right?
yeah,
So you're an adult. Like you're an
yeah,
18-year-old. Like technically your body should be, you're an adult, right? So that's what's hard is like, yes, your body wasn't ready, but at the same time, why? Come on,
exactly.
doctor.
Help me out
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went home, sat with it, right? I thankfully I put my foot down again and I went back and asked for a requisition to see a gynecologist, which led me to some more unknowns. But at that visit with that family doctor, he said, you know what, have you tried drinking a glass of wine and like maybe getting the edge off a little bit? And again, keep in mind I'm 18. So here in Canada, that's an illegal recommendation to make.
I mean, they do the same thing here in the US though. Like, oh, you don't like
Mm-hmm.
it? Maybe you're just not drunk enough. And it's like, you're a medical professional. That's your medical professional opinion is get drunk. That's the plan.
Yeah. It's incredibly sad. It really is. And
It
that's
is.
why we are forced to lose trust in the medical community. And of course, there are
We
medical
are.
professionals out there There are pelvic floor physiotherapists out there that I had no idea about at the time that
Yep.
can be
Yep.
such a huge help in the physical
Yep.
aspects of things. But I think like we're forced to go out into the alternative Eastern medicine approaches, which I found to be incredible for my own system.
Mhm.
Right? We need to
Yep.
start learning about our nervous system and finding safety and downregulation there. What does it mean to be in connection with someone and not to feel threatened, not to have our past experiences with men come up into the picture? I realized I had a fear of the masculine. I had
Mhm.
repressed my feminine side very heavily, which led me to believe that I was undeserving of pleasure, that I
Yeah.
had to be
Yep.
the one to always give, to always provide, to always nurture. And I kind of put myself at the bottom of the priority list. So
Which is
there's elements
so
like that.
common. This is such a common, especially with women. And then I think societally, we are trained that like men are the one that want sex anyway, you know, in heterosexual situations. So if you're not liking it, you're just living up to societal standards. What's the big deal? And which is so devastating.
It is. And there is a sense of shame then in any sort of discovery that we want sex, that we
Oh,
have
absolutely.
desire.
Yeah.
Just yesterday in our group conversation with some women that I support, we were talking about the two different types of desire, right? Emily Nagoski's work, Come As You Are, as you've spoken about as
Yeah.
well, an amazing book. And we started to realize that desire doesn't have to look any one particular way. And we are
Yeah.
conditioned into feeling like unless we have spontaneous desire,
Mhm.
we are not good enough sexual beings.
Yep. Well, we
So,
put so many of these things on a pedestal. Desire has to be spontaneous. Everyone's libidos have to be, and they have to be at the same time. So we should always have a matched libido with this gorgeous, spontaneous. Everyone rips their clothes off. Everyone has an orgasm from intercourse, penis and vagina intercourse, and it is so unrealistic.
yeah. So it's up to us to create a new, not a new normal, right? Because everything's normal, but to spread the message that vaginismus too is simply a normal body response. And
Yeah,
how is it that we can train away from living in protection to being
yeah,
able to feel safe in the surrender to life? Because I discovered this whole other aspect of control versus surrender in my own body and how I had always found safety and control. When I was
yeah.
younger and my parents fought a lot, I felt completely in a state of chaos around my family situation.
Mhm.
So, where did we find safety, right? Like in the books, at school, in extracurricular activities. And we kept
Yep.
busy and busy and busy. And we found
Same.
safety up in the mind rather than the body because we didn't feel
Yeah.
safe in this cocoon that was supposed to be our home.
Yeah.
So that's
Yep.
some deep stuff.
Similar.
Like
I went
that's
the
really,
eating disorder route. That was my control mechanism was extracurriculars and eating disorders. But when you have that chaos at home, you have to find stability somewhere. And it's often in what can I control?
yeah. And I'm sorry you went through that. It's so interesting too that
Same.
sexuality and food are so related because it's
Yeah.
pleasure. And we try to find a source of pleasure that just fills this gap that we have no one to talk to about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm So you discovered all of this. And then,
Yeah. And then I was like, I need to share some of this. Well, at this time too, I was going down this route of the high performer, right? Because my head was buried in the books. I got good grades. My dad always told me about being a businesswoman, a corporate girl, and I kind of followed in those footsteps also that my sister took, and she's an older sister. And so I became an accountant. I got my CPA. I was living this corporate life, and at this whole time, I was also healing from vaginismus. But even after
yeah.
the fact, there was still something missing. And I felt like I need more fulfillment in my life. And so I resigned from there, the corporate world. I kind of went inwards. I took a couple of years to learn about whatever was interesting. Thankfully, I
Mm,
had the safety net in my life to be able to do that, and not a lot of people do. So I'm really grateful for that. And then I started just sharing these inspirational quotes on an Instagram account that I first called Pain Free and Intimate. And that's probably how you know me as mostly.
Yep.
And slowly but surely, I started gaining confidence that people are wanting to hear this, that people are looking for this keyword of vaginismus.
Yep.
And with that came the bravery to share my own story, write a little book, create a little free course, and then start supporting people and coaching and really sharing whatever feels relevant.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing these stories and seeing people as they're kind of called into this work. It's very vulnerable work, especially sharing like your own experiences and stories, but it's so important and so needed. And it's bizarre to me that, as you know, as Instagrammers, as we technically really are, right? We are sometimes the best resource that people have initially to point them in the direction of the care that they need or give them the coaching that they need. I've been going through my own, like, what am I doing? Is this really, is Instagram the best platform for this? Is this, but I just keep coming back to where else can people go? Because our medical systems are not great for this. They just aren't. And it's so hit and miss with care providers because when they're a good doctor, they're so good. But when they're bad, they are so bad.
Yeah. And it leads to damage on so many levels. What did it
Yeah.
look like? What did it look like for you to transition in your life to this work, right? You were a midwife as well, and you were in that medical community path.
I came from birth and I had to retire after some stuff happened with my kids. And so it was just a weird place to be in because I had all this information and knew that no one else had it and that everyone needed it, right? We all need to know more about all of these things. We need to know what the resources are and where to go to. And these conversations, people need to hear these conversations. So I was like, what do I do? And so I started an Instagram, started putting up just information. I very specifically didn't want to go and be just a birth resource. I really wanted to be a vagina resource because with our maternal mortality rates, where they're headed, which is worse and worse every year, I was like, hey, how do we break this system? How do we get rid of the racism? How do we break the mortality rates and start bringing them back down? And I was like, it can't start when you're pregnant. It has to start at home with our generation and the kids that they're raising. And it has to start with the birth control discussion because that's when you start building a relationship with an OBGYN or even a family doctor that's, going to be starting to take care of GYN care for you. I was like, people need to be empowered when they're talking to their doctor about birth control. They need to learn how to have that conversation and what that looks like. They need to learn how to stand up for themselves because if they don't, then the next time they see them is when they're pregnant or they're going through fertility issues. And if they don't learn how to stand up to their doctor by then, this is when their doctor kills them when they go in to have the baby because their doctor is making all the decisions for them because they don't trust themselves. So I was like, where do I catch it? And it's at the beginning. It's telling people how to talk to their kids about sex, and it's telling people how to talk to their doctors about birth control. It's telling them what care providers to go see when they have vaginismus and that pelvic floor physical therapy exists.
Yeah.
I feel like we're doing so much education around all that, right? And then teaching them your menstrual cycle, ovulating is good for you. Your menstrual cycle is not a curse. It's actually awesome. So it's empowering. I just was like, I have to empower the people because if I don't, the broken system that we're currently in is going to keep going. That misogyny is going to live on and we're just going to keep dealing with the same crap. And I can't keep watching people die at the hands of bad care providers. Can't do it. I can't stomach it. So that's really what inspired this. And it's been interesting because I've been revisiting that why recently. I'm back in school. I'm trying to figure out which direction to go. And I'm always debating, what I'm doing right now too big of an ask? Is it too hard to reach the world? Because that was what I set out to do. Right. Should I try harder? Maybe I need to just, bring it in and be meeting with people one-on-one in small groups and locally and in person. I don't know. But that's what I wanted to reach the masses. And I wanted people to know that there is good care out there and that they should demand it and that we need to kill off the rest of this generation of bad doctors. And we need to teach our new doctors that we're not willing to put up with this crap. It's time. Yeah, that's
thank you,
fine.
thank you, thank you for doing this work. I got goosebumps listening to that. And I want you to know that you have reached the masses. You
Thank
have.
you.
You, the thing that felt right at the time has been accomplished. And if that changes, as it sounds like it's evolving into at least some sort of different structure or maybe a different message, trust yourself like you already
Yeah,
are, right? And I love that
yeah.
you said that because it's all about us trusting ourselves in order to
It is.
find the truth within.
It is. And but it's tricky. This is so uncharted, because we are so
Yeah.
used to it. Sorry, I'm plugging phones in. It's tricky because you're like, how far can I go on the internet? Do I dare talk about this on the internet? This is very vulnerable and personal to me. Do I really want to go there? I'm also asking other people to get very vulnerable and personal. Is that a good idea? You know what I mean? Like, is this a good
Yeah.
idea?
The
I'm
age-old
constantly having
question,
that
is this a good
conversation.
idea?
Is this a good
To be
idea?
or not to be? Or in my
Yes,
post today, I said to initiate or not to initiate. It's all
seriously.
it's all fractal.
Yes. So, one thing that brings me so much joy is conversations like this one with other people who have a shared mission. It always feels so good to go, I'm not alone. I'm not the only crazy person out there. We are all trying to fix this together, and we're trying to talk about vaginismus together. We're trying to solve a lot of these other issues together. And I'm thrilled to see more pelvic floor physical therapists getting on social media and talking about what they do. I'm thrilled to see more midwives and more doctors even talking about like why some of our practices are currently problematic.
Yeah. The fact that we're coming together as a community and we're seeing this conversation happening, I feel like is good evidence to just like bring us up and say, you're doing a good job. Just keep going.
Yeah,
You got
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Now, I want to comment here too, like the just keep going sometimes also feels really off as a statement to myself that I have made because I have always lived in this like go, 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 just
yes,
push through it, right? No
yes,
pain, no gain mentality.
yep,
And what's so key is for us to be able to trust ourselves again and be like, you know what? Pushing through just doesn't feel right now. Let me take a few days. Let me
yeah,
lay on this couch all day and not be productive and still feel like a good human being, like I am
yes,
a quality person. Because we
yeah.
are so hard on ourselves when we rest.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it comes back to too, and I know we wanted to talk about this. Our society is very masculine, and it caters beautifully to the male hormone cycle. And it's not that this is bad. It's not going to fit as well with our hormone cycles. So they are on a 24-hour cycle. Waking up at the same time every day, amazing. Working 8 to 5, awesome. Eating the same every day, works great. Like that harsh scheduling and those tight works really beautifully with the male hormone cycle. The female hormone cycle, however, we're like, 28, 32 days, somewhere in there. And we're going to have strengths and weaknesses depending on where we're at in that cycle. And so project-based work looks better. Working out cyclically and differently and eating cyclically, all of those things are going to work out better for that female hormone cycle. And unfortunately, I think oftentimes we get really weighed down with the guilt of I can't keep up with the male hormone cycle. And I'm supposed to because that's what my society is doing. And I feel like half the time I'm just telling people like, no, 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 no. No, you actually get to rest. And if you rest, you'll be that much more productive when you're productive. It is worth it. Lay down if you need to lay down because I'll come out of luteal phase right before I bleed, and I really try to take it a little bit easier. And if I just take it easy and then take it easy on those first couple of days of menstruating, that follicular phase energy shows up like a train, and I am up early in the morning. I want to go all day. I want to work hard. I want to lift heavy. I want to go, go, go. And I have the energy to do it. So I get so much done in a week that I'm able then to like step back a little, during the other phases of my cycle and go, okay, I busted it out for that week and a half. And now I can like take it down a notch, rest when I need to rest, knowing that energy is just going to return again once they go back through the cycle, you know?
Yeah. It's
But
the
that
trust that it's
requires
gonna be
trust.
back.
Yes, you
Exactly.
have to trust yourself, and we don't learn, we're not taught how to do that. That is something that you have to do yourself, and that can be scary.
Absolutely. I feel like we put the bar up here at follicular, and it's like, I remember how I felt then.
Yes,
I need to do this all the time.
yep,
And look at the alpha over here, right? The
yes,
masculine, which I like to call alpha because there's so much toxicity as well associated with like
yeah,
feminine and masculine,
yeah.
as though feminine equals weakness when it absolutely does not.
No, different. It's
Um,
just different. That's all. It's not, they're just different. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah. Well, I love that you're spreading this message. And this has so much to do with vaginismus also. And
Mhm.
with dilating, when we get to dilating, right? We don't want to start dilating right away. We are told to dilate every day for like 5, 10 minutes or whatever that medical professional might believe in. And as soon as I hear that, I'm like, wait a second, let's look at your
Yeah.
menstrual cycle. You're not supposed to dilate every day. And if you don't want to dilate, even when you could be dilating, that is good enough reason not to. Let's honor
Yes.
ourselves. Let's honor our
Yep.
desire and our no. And as soon as we do that, our body is like, oh, look at that. She's
I'm
honoring
safe.
my no. I'm safe. Yeah, I don't have to do it for her. Let me give
Yep.
her that responsibility and just relax and surrender and enjoy.
It's such different energy to come at anything with. But it's the same with all of it. It's that trust of that doesn't feel right today, so I'm not going to do it today. But maybe it will feel fine tomorrow, and I'll pursue that then. It is so liberating and like such a wonderful, and it's difficult. I watch people bristle when I talk about these things because they're like, no, anything men can do I can do better. I can
Mm,
anything you can do I can do. Bleeding, anything, like we get really caught up in this because this is how we were trained. And it's, once again, it is not that we are less than, it is not that resting makes us weak, it is not, it is simply that we are different, and we're going to do things in a little bit different rhythm than maybe our partners or people around us.
yeah, beautifully said. That's why I resonate so much with liberated. Liberated is the word, unleashed is the word, and liberated in love. Love
Yeah.
for ourselves, and only from there, also love from others, and seeing how we actually fit together as different people who are equal and
Yes.
still brilliant.
Well, and I look at it too, and I'm like, I'm so grateful for the difference because, and I'm in a heterosexual relationship, and so I have this going for me, but I feel like we balance each other out really beautifully because he's got fantastic masculine energy that's like so healthy, and like I try to really live into my feminine energy in a healthful way, and it brings a lot of balance into our relationship. And I'm so grateful. And even as I look at queer relationships, I still see some of these balances. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see the switch off between the two. So maybe one partner's more masculine and one's more feminine. Maybe they're both very both, but there's still this like beautiful yin yang that happens, and creates balance. And I love it.
Yeah. It's the polarity that ignites the spark too. One has to be in one and the other has to be in the other for there to be fire. We can be
Yes.
Netflix and chilling when both are in Omega, right? What we call the feminine Omega. We can be
Yeah.
like working on a project together, both in Alpha. But in the
Yes.
bedroom, it's going to be a flip between one and the other to have some polarity going.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you look at like follicular phase. That is when we are in a much more masculine-esque like energy. We have that testosterone working for us. We're able to build muscle more. We're able to work harder. We have that. And it is, I do hate that because our society is masculine, I do feel like people are constantly chasing follicular phase energy. They're like, why
Yeah.
can't I do everything that I did a week ago? Well, because it's resting time. This is when we get ready for hibernation, and then we hibernate for a minute, and then we go right back into it. So it's coming, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. If we all
Yeah.
hone in on that and honor that and embrace that, like imagine the difference in life that we would see.
Oh, I presented this at a business conference, and one of the other people presenting with me came up to me afterwards, and she said, oh yeah, my entire office is female. We track everyone's menstrual cycles and just play to their strengths. Huge
Yes.
success. It was, I was
Amazing.
like, she's like, yep, we just have a spreadsheet. So if people are ovulating, that's who's on camera and doing like Instagram stories and videos that week. As soon as people are menstruating, we want them really diving deep into intuition, making plans for what we're going to be doing. As soon as they hit follicular, we work longer hours with them that week. Like, it was the
I
coolest
love
thing to see
that.
it in action. And it may, like, I think people are like, that sounds complicated. It actually really isn't. It's so straightforward and easy and plays to everyone's strengths. So you're getting more than fighting all the time. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's so much conflict energy as soon as we're fighting with ourselves.
yeah, yeah. And it's not fun. It's just not a great way to live in general, you know?
Mm.
So if you were going to leave, like, closing remarks about
Yeah.
vaginismus, what is it that you want everyone to know?
I usually try to listen and just see what comes and trust that. What I want everyone to know is that your truth is your truth. If you don't feel ready to dive into this healing journey that we call it,
Mhm.
take your
Yeah.
time. You are on the perfect path, right? Because that's your truth. If there
Yeah.
is this spark igniting within you that feels like, oh my goodness, like I'm actually curious now. When there's curiosity, it means there's safety. So, boom, you have checked off safety, and now you're in curiosity. Beautiful. Trust that and go with it. And I believe, at least, that the right resources, the right people, the right conversations are going to be presented. So, you're doing
Oh,
great.
I love that. And I 100% agree. I think sometimes it's hard when you're like, okay, I think I have vaginismus. That can be so scary. So sit with it
Yeah.
for a minute, let it resonate, take it slow, go at whatever your pace is. Same thing with so many things. People are like, I know birth control might be hard on my body, but I'm like not ready to. And then for me, I'm like, okay, then you're not ready. Like, don't
Yeah.
worry about this stuff. Take it one step at a time. You'll figure it out. Like, it will come, however you want that to play out. Everything is this way. And so I love that. I think that's perfect.
Thank you. And thank you so much for this conversation. I look forward to
Thanks
being
for
in
your
each other's
patience.
spaces and having more of these chats.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today. If you guys have any questions about vaginismus, feel free to reach out to her. She's a fantastic resource and a great person to follow.
Thank you. Thank you, April. Have an
Yeah,
amazing rest of your day and
you
let's
too.
let's rest up.
Amen.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Okay. Bye. Bye everyone.